Hello and welcome to episode 262 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. Right off the bat, I have to say thank you to all of you who are listening this week and all of you who have been listening for the last half decade. This episode marks our 5-year anniversary. After a first attempt in 2020 that ended up hitting some snags, I refused to quit on this idea. And now we've hit a huge milestone. 90% of podcasts don't get past 3 episodes. Of the 200,000 who make it past 3 episodes, 90% of them quit before hitting 20 episodes. That first clumsy attempt actually made it past 20 episodes. Now, this version has made it to episode 262, a brand new episode every week for 5 whole years. This is a huge accomplishment, and I ask that you reward us by making sure that you're subscribed to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. If you are subscribed, share episodes with friends who love theme parks and Disney, and make sure to watch videos on the channel, click that like button liberally, and drop positive comments on as many videos as possible. On today's episode, we're going to commemorate another big milestone. The United States of America will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in July of this year. Since my co-host Sarah says and I were both history majors in college, and she is such a huge fan of Broadway, we're going to spend the next 2 episodes talking about the musical Hamilton, specifically the version that can be seen on Disney+. Let's get things started right now. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Hello, everybody.
2026, July 4th, 2026 in particular, will mark the 250th anniversary or the 250th birthday of the United States of America. And this gives us a chance as a podcast that focuses a lot on Disney to take the Disney Plus musical Hamilton and talk about its history and how it represents some of these characters. And if we have that chance, Sarah, I am not throwing away my shot to talk about Hamilton because we have the opportunity. Yes, I thought about that for way too long before we recorded this episode. Now, people who have heard Sarah on the show before probably know that she is a huge Broadway fan. We are going to talk a little bit about Hamilton as a Broadway show, but what people might not realize is both Sarah and myself, history majors.
Yes,
so we are going to be talking about how some of the characters were portrayed in Hamilton the musical and how that relates to those characters as actual living human beings from history. So first of all, I think Hamilton is a musical that even people like me who aren't huge musicals fans know and probably have seen since it was on Disney Plus. So this is a really good introduction, along with some of the animated Disney movies, especially of the Renaissance, along with things like The Producers and The Wizard of Oz, to get people into musicals or to sort of welcome them into that world. So I know that as a big Broadway musicals fan, this is probably not necessarily one of your favorite musicals because you're probably like, oh, you know, this one you've never heard of is better, or this one you've never heard of is better.
Not at all. My favorite musical ever is Phantom of the Opera, so that's got to say something.
Touche. But I just want to say, as an introductory piece, what do you think of Hamilton as sort of this welcome to the genre?
I love Hamilton. I'm not going to lie. I can't lie. I've seen it twice live and then, of course, on Disney Plus. And every time it's mind blowing. And it's for literally, they put something in there. Lin-Manuel Miranda, when he wrote this, put something in there for everybody. I mean, King George, his music is like going to those older style of Broadway, which is what is going to rope in people like my parents. Then you have rap and you have all of these cadences and things that is what's bringing in people who are younger. So it really is written to bring all these generations together in one show. And that's not something you see. I mean, yes, I know people who are true purists for like old musicals and things like that, but it's what Lin-Manuel Miranda did with this show really opened up Broadway to everyone, like literally everyone.
And I know that there are some criticisms of this musical as far as it is very much of its time.
Right.
It's very much a musical that was written during the optimism of the early years of President Obama.
Right.
It almost feels like at this point in the country's history, like it's almost a little bit outdated, a little bit quaint. However, when you look at it just as a piece of artwork and somebody trying to take these figures who were all very, very flawed, but
Yes.
had some good ideas, some bad ideas,
Yep.
but to try to recontextualize the American Revolution and to sort of frame it as an underdog story. And then by framing it as an underdog story, being able to welcome other people into the mix, other groups of people, and say, maybe these people who were creating a new country weren't thinking about you, but you can take these documents as a blueprint. You can take their ideas and build on them to try to create something better. That's very much of the 2008, 2009,
Oh, yeah,
2010
totally.
mindset. But what do you think about that optimism that is all throughout the musical?
Yeah, I agree completely with what you said about how, right now, with the way the world is, it's hard to like look at that and not think like, okay, this is getting kind of dated with that kind of show, right? But at the same time, when you're looking at it from like a historical perspective and the way that they use these characters and the fact of Broadway has always been incredibly whitewashed. It's not a secret. And the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda brought in so many actors who people were, because I mean, I remember when Hamilton came out and there was like a generation, people were like, you cannot have a black man playing Aaron Burr. You cannot have a black man playing Thomas Jefferson. Like, you can't do that. But the thing is, it was completely revolutionary, which is, get it? Revolutionary? Revolution? But I think that one thing about this show, like you said, it's so uplifting and all these horrible things happen throughout the show, especially in the second act, that it still is giving this message of hope for something that was an actual historical event. Yes, of course it was changed, just like movies, just like everything else. You can't, like, people just don't put the true story of everything out there. That show would be like 8 hours long. So I think it still resonates, especially with the younger generation. I know many of my friends who have kids who are young teenagers. Their young teenagers have come around now and they're like, I love this show. And so it's like, it's kind of circling back, where it was our generation that loved it. Now those kids are loving it. So
I know a story from back in 2020 when everybody was quarantined. So they were doing special like
yes.
Zoom meetings online. And I know that there was one about Hamilton where a bunch of the original cast got on and talked about their experience. And one of the funniest stories that they told was they asked some of the actors and actresses, what it was like to be cast in the show. And I'm going to try the pronunciation. I'm going to try Renee Elise Goldsberry.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Who played Angelica Schuyler.
Yep.
She was offered the role of Angelica Schuyler, and she went home and she thought she was going to turn it down because she didn't want to be in this, rap fusion. She thought of herself
Right.
as more of a traditional Broadway actress. And her husband said to her, "No, I think you have to do this. I think this is really, really important. And I think that this is something that if you turn it down, you're going to regret it."
Yeah.
And then they asked Davy Diggs, they said, "Did you have, any of the same issues?" And he said, "Well, I did have one question. I asked them if the checks were going to clear." And when they said yes, I took the role. So that's a little bit of a funny story, but I do think that it gets into what we're talking about with the optimism, with the
Yeah.
recontextualizing how, yes, Broadway has been whitewashed, and even the actors and actresses who might normally think, "Oh, I don't know if I want to be associated with this because I want to
Mhm.
be going after these other types of roles."
Right.
She realized through her husband that this was important and
Yeah.
this is something that really needs to be made.
Yes.
I want to talk about some of these representations of the characters, and I think we have to start with it's Hamilton. We have to
Right.
start with the presentation
Right.
of Lin-Manuel Miranda as Alexander Hamilton. And when we talk about this, we're going to be strictly talking about the Disney Plus version that you
Yes.
can watch right now if you have Disney Plus. So, Lin-Manuel Miranda as Alexander Hamilton, an incredibly talented songwriter, a
Yes.
very talented performer, but somebody who I think you will admit, even as somebody who is not a Broadway aficionado,
Mhm.
I can tell that talent wise, sometimes he is outshined by some of
Yeah.
the people he put around him. First of all, I think that's kind of brave to do that,
Mhm.
to know that you're going to be outshined, but to still
Mhm.
cast those people because you want the better show.
Yep.
But what do you think of his portrayal of this character from history?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, one thing I like about having this conversation is I've seen 3 separate people play Alexander Hamilton, and they've all played him differently. And Lin-Manuel Miranda, I mean, he was a creator of this show, and I am definitely a fan of his. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of hate for this man for some reason, but I kind of think it was almost ingenious that he put so many incredibly talented people around him. I mean, his best friend is George Washington in real life, right? This man is in all of his work. But at the same time, it's like he fits in so well, but it also for the character of Alexander Hamilton, especially in the first act, you're seeing him as this kid who's coming over from another country to build this life. So he's this weird little guy that everyone's like, "Okay, like who's this dude?" And it's almost like, okay, if I played this part as like Lin-Manuel Miranda playing this part, you have Alexander Hamilton coming in around all these people who are already part of this new world and whatnot. He's trying to place himself in there to change. So you wouldn't expect some guy to bust out like operatic, amazing. I mean, he's incredibly talented, but not someone you would expect to come in and just be like, "I'm going to blow your pants off right away with my amazing singing voice and my amazing rapping and all of this." And then you kind of see him change throughout the whole show. So I think his portrayal and how he does such a great job, in my opinion, for someone who it just kills me. He always puts himself as the main character in all of the shows he writes. He always is the main character. But I think it worked really well for Hamilton.
So, in his portrayal, I've seen criticisms of the Hamilton movie, or,
Mhm.
well, the musical,
Yeah,
or the
the pro
version
show.
on Disney Plus, right? And people will say that, for example, the scene where he slaps five with the Marquis de Lafayette and say, "Immigrants, we get the job done." And he never would have viewed himself as an immigrant. And some of these other things, him being so staunchly anti-slavery in the musical when his anti-slavery credentials are a little more wishy-washy in real life.
Right, right.
But I think that gets into the recontextualizing that Lin-Manuel Miranda is trying to achieve here, where he's trying to say, okay, maybe Hamilton wouldn't have viewed himself as an immigrant, but in modern society, we would view somebody like Alexander Hamilton as an immigrant, that people can come from anywhere and influence the national discord. So while it might not be historically accurate, I think it's accurate to Alexander Hamilton, the character, if not Alexander Hamilton, the person. And I think we're going to see a lot of that throughout the course of analyzing these characters.
And seeing the change too from the whole part of immigrants, we get the job done, to what you see him do to Lafayette in the second act. You really kind of see the change in the character from young guy full of hopes and dreams to now I'm in the government and this is how I'm changing. So that's another thing too.
And now I'm selling out my friend. Good point.
Exactly.
That was a very good point. Leslie Odom Jr. as Aaron Burr. First of all, an incredible performance.
Oh, yes. Oh.
And Aaron Burr, you might not believe this, but in real life was way more of a jerk than even in the musical. Like, you might think, oh, this guy looks like a bad dude in this musical.
Right.
And he was even worse. However, the way they have Leslie Odom Jr. playing Aaron Burr is perfect because you need this foil to Hamilton. And he was right in the portrayal, as Aaron Burr was an opportunist, and Aaron Burr would do whatever he could to promote Aaron Burr. When he said, when Hamilton asked him, when did you become a Democratic Republican? And he said, well, when it became the easiest way to get elected to the Senate. Like, that was him. Now, he was much worse than that. After he was kicked out of the vice presidency, he tried to go out west and form his own country and become president of that country.
Wow.
So he was a bad dude. But the way that they play him as this opportunist sort of makes it seem like, okay, that's a relationship with which people can relate. Maybe you can't relate to the person who's so evil that they would go try to start their own country to be president of it. But you can relate to somebody who is just trying to get ahead, who's trying to advance, and might sell out people along the way. We even talked about how Hamilton eventually would go and sell out people along the way. So while you're looking at Burr as this opportunist, you're kind of seeing the reflection of Hamilton in him as well. I'm sure that you have seen other people portray Aaron Burr, and I am sure they have done an amazing job. But the way Leslie Odom Jr. played this character is such a defining version that I do think that you're at least going to compare everyone else to him a little.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, like, I did love the two other gentlemen that I saw that played Aaron Burr. They were phenomenal. But Leslie Odom Jr. is just, he is that character. That is him. Like, I don't care who's playing Aaron Burr. That is Leslie Odom Jr. I mean, he's back on Broadway. I mean, I don't know if his run is done or not, but back playing Aaron Burr in Hamilton. And so it's like, Aaron Burr was a trash human being. He was a trash human being. But the way that that character is portrayed, I mean, one, using him as the narrator for the show is just amazing, because you wouldn't think you would be watching a show that's being told through the eyes of the villain, basically. And another thing, they make him so human. Like, the humanity they add to him at the end when the duel happens. Every single time I watch that show, I cry when Aaron Burr is singing his part about what did I do? Like, what is this? And I'm like, I know that I should not be crying because this guy is just horrible. But the way that it's written and the way especially Leslie Odom Jr. performs that, I just feel so bad for him. I'm like, oh my gosh.
This is going to sound like a side tangent, but just recently I was having a discussion with somebody online about MASH, and they were talking about the difference between when Frank Burns was the foil and
Mhm.
when later in the show Charles Emerson Winchester was brought in as the foil, and how much better the show got when the antagonist, you had some ability to empathize with the antagonist, right? So even though you don't like Aaron Burr in this,
Right.
his performance and the way Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote the part, you can have empathy for the character, even though you know that you don't like the character.
Yep.
And that's one of the great things about this. In real life, Aaron Burr was somebody who was hated by Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams. You can't get those three people to agree
It brings them
on
together.
anything. Arguably, John Adams even kind of liked King George. Like, that's how
Yeah.
that's how bad Aaron Burr was, that you could get those three people to agree that he was trash. Now,
Absolutely.
a performance in Hamilton that I think gets overlooked a lot because of some of the shinier performances. And you mentioned him earlier, Christopher Jackson as George Washington.
Love him.
And he does this incredible thing where Christopher Jackson does not look like George Washington.
No, not at all.
However, if you would have lined up every actor and actress who was in Hamilton and didn't tell me what their role was and said, who's going to play George Washington, I would point at him right away. Like, you would be like, that guy is George Washington. And the way that he can command the stage and command that authority without singing like Renee Elise Goldsberry, like without having the veins popping out of his neck as he's hitting these notes. Like, he's just solid and consistent. And that's what you think of when you think of George Washington. We only know him from history books. We only know him from other people's accounts. But that's what Christopher Jackson is playing. He's not playing the real George Washington. He's playing what we think of in our minds and the idea of George Washington, because most people who fought in the Revolution never met George Washington. Most people who lived at that time never met George Washington, but he had that commanding figure that just the aura or the thought of George Washington could bring a country together. And Christopher Jackson plays that so well.
Yes.
I don't know how they got so lucky as to get him. I guess you said he does a lot with Lin-Manuel Miranda, so he was probably
every Lin-Manuel Miranda project in some way. I mean, even Moana, he is the singing voice of the king of the island. The Moana's dad, it is his singing voice, is Christopher Jackson. He's in everything Lin-Manuel Miranda does.
So I'm imagining that in some ways this part was written for him, which
quite possibly, yes,
probably does work into that, but he just personifies George Washington in a way that I just think is incredible. And I'm going to be bringing this up a number of times during this conversation, but the HBO miniseries John Adams.
Oh, so good.
And first of all, amazing. But a lot of these characters were portrayed in that as well. And I had an old boss of mine told me, you have to watch John Adams. And he said, the guy who plays George Washington, it's like they pulled him right off the dollar bill. While they did that in John Adams, I feel like they almost pulled the idea of George Washington right off the dollar bill with Christopher Jackson's performance. And you can just see how the aura of this one man kept everything from crumbling, even though, like everybody, he was very flawed, and but he knew what to do. He knew how to act to keep everything together.
Yes.
Before we get to my favorite performance from Hamilton, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, the
Okay.
character who did not appear in the musical, but still played an important part in the musical. And that is John Adams, the aforementioned John
Mm.
Adams. And Lin-Manuel Miranda decided not to include John Adams in this musical as a tribute to the musical 1776, in
Yes.
which John Adams plays a huge role.
He's the main
And
character.
Lin-Manuel Miranda was kind of saying that is the definitive musical role of John Adams. I'm not going to try to recreate that. And I think that that is a good decision for a number of reasons. One, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had their own back and forth at this time. But Alexander Hamilton and John Adams were also fighting at this time. That is a situation where if you introduce another antagonist for Thomas Jefferson, it's just going to make everything too convoluted because you're going to have this sort of three-way hatred. It's going to add too much. And I think
Right.
that that was a really, really good decision to keep John Adams in the background.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a huge fan of 1776. And I love, oh my gosh, I love the music of that show so much. And it does. It definitely helps zero in on kind of the direction that Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted to take with this show. And it would have been so convoluted with too many storylines otherwise. Because there's a lot going on in Hamilton. There would be a lot going on with Hamilton if he was in it.
Davy Diggs plays both the Marquis de Lafayette, and then in act number 2, he plays Thomas Jefferson. He is, of course, amazing as the Marquis de Lafayette, but I want to talk about his portrayal of Thomas Jefferson. And I'm going to get back to the John Adams miniseries, where that actor, who hasn't done a lot, by the way,
Mhm.
I've like looked up what he's done, and he really hasn't been in a lot, but he plays Thomas Jefferson as Thomas Jefferson. And
Yes.
he's great in it. He is so good. And he's quiet. He doesn't speak up very often. He does his writing, but that's how he communicates with the world. And he's a
Right.
very, sort of behind the scenes character. He's, when they're declaring independence, he supports John Adams in that, but he
Right.
doesn't outwardly give speeches. And that is Thomas Jefferson, the person.
Yeah.
Davy Diggs plays Thomas Jefferson, the monument. He plays Thomas Jefferson, the legend. There's a famous John F. Kennedy quote when the White House hosted a number of scientists, and President Kennedy got up on stage and said, "This is the greatest collection of minds ever in the history of the White House since Thomas Jefferson dined alone." Like, he has this reputation of being a larger than life figure,
Right.
but he was like a wilting flower in person in real life. So Davy Diggs plays the reputation, and he does it so well because if you would play that wilting flower that was the real Thomas Jefferson, he wouldn't be a deserving antagonist to
Right.
Alexander Hamilton or to Aaron Burr or to George Washington. You have to play the myth, and he does it so well. What Did I Miss is such a great introduction to his character, and
Yes.
talking about how pissed him off until we made a two-party system. Like,
Yep.
he created the divide in the he didn't create the divide in the country, but John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and Thomas Jefferson really started something that we still see today in some respects in this division of the country: rural, urban, southern, northern. Like, those divisions were started by these three men.
Right.
George Washington held it all together, but then George Washington died.
Right. Right. One thing going back to what you're saying, about Daveed Diggs's portrayal of Thomas Jefferson is if they would have made him that little wilting flower, his partnership that you see in the Broadway musical with the actor who plays James Madison would have been so blah, because the actor playing James Madison is just so, staunch and like very calm. And it's almost like you have the one really worked up friend that's always like, yeah, let's do this. And then the one friend who's got like the cool, calm demeanor. And I think that worked so well with the two of them, even though that that's not really what they were like in real life, right? So I think that their choice, or Daveed Diggs's choice to portray him that way, definitely was good in regards to how he was partnered with James Madison as well.
And remember, this was a time when, like we said, people didn't see George Washington.
Right.
Most people never met these figures. They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have television where, the president was on TV and was on the internet all the time. They must have loved their lives so much, by the way.
No kidding, right?
But what Thomas Jefferson was to most of the people who lived in colonial America, in early America, was his writing. And his writing was bombastic. His writing was the way Daveed Diggs portrayed him as a person. So while that wasn't his character, that's what people thought of at the time when they thought of Thomas Jefferson, this charismatic figure, because all they ever did was read what he had to say. He delivered his State of the Unions or States of the Union, I guess, by handing a piece of paper to Congress. He didn't give speeches. So he was known for his amazing writing, and they just portrayed his writing almost as if that was him as a person.
Yeah. I have to make a quick side note that's really funny so we both love Daveed Diggs, right? And you really love him as Thomas Jefferson, and I really love him as Lafayette. And it makes me laugh because in your office, as I'm looking at you on Zoom, you have him behind you as Thomas Jefferson. Mine is not unpacked, but I have the same pot, but him as Lafayette. So
I love him as Lafayette as well.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And the dual roles, just kind of a side note, the dual roles as we're getting into these characters and these historical figures that they did from Act 1 to Act 2 of moving these actors from Lafayette to Thomas Jefferson or Hercules Mulligan to James Madison, things like that. It's just, I absolutely love that as well, to see the character shift in these actors.
And like you mentioned before, the Marquis de Lafayette was on Alexander Hamilton's side during the Revolution, and they were friends during the Revolution, or at least allies during the Revolution. But then during the French Revolution, Thomas Jefferson sided with the Marquis de Lafayette, and Alexander Hamilton did not. So in some sense, yes, he's playing two different characters, but he's kind of playing one idea.
Right.
He's playing the idea of revolutionary, where Alexander Hamilton was a revolutionary, and then he turned into a bureaucrat.
Yep.
That's where we're going to leave things off on this episode. Do you agree with our assessments of Hamilton? Who's your favorite character from the musical? Let us know in the comments. Sarah Says and I will return next week to wrap up this conversation on Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.